On May 14th, 2008, shortly after midnight, a young man, 19 years old, named Brandon Swanson, crashed his car into this ditch right here. To this day, no trace of Brandon Swanson has ever been found, and the story of his disappearance is incredibly bizarre. Some people believe he was kidnapped, others think he fell into a nearby river and drowned, and others believe he was abducted by aliens. In today's episode, we're on the ground here in Minnesota. It's about 12 degrees out right now. It's freezing, and we're diving headfirst into this very, very perplexing mystery. You're watching the Paranormal Files. Sometimes you hear a story so mysterious, so bizarre, so shocking, that the story consumes you. The facts of the case become an obsession of yours, and you dive deep into the dark waters, trying to dig up any and all information that you can possibly find. For me, one of those cases is that of the disappearance of Brandon Swanson, which remains, in my mind, one of the most mysterious and disturbing stories in the history of the United States of America. Brandon was your regular all-American 19-year-old kid from Minnesota, but one day in May of 2008, he vanished into thin air. And to this day, not a trace of him, his body or his presence, has ever been found. Some people believe Brandon was murdered, others believe he was kidnapped, some believe he died on accident, fell into a well, or was run over by farm equipment, and others believe that he may have slipped into another dimension, or could have possibly been abducted by aliens. On today's episode, we're going to be investigating the story of Brandon's disappearance, then retracing his steps through the frost-covered Minnesotan countryside in order to investigate ourselves, to see if we can capture any evidence or proof of what may have happened to him on camera. Is his body still around here somewhere?
Yes.
Can you find my grain?
Hurry! Does sound like an old farmer.
We're asking, is the body here on Earth? And it says no. Where else could it have gone?
And through doing this episode and other episodes like this, we aim to raise awareness about these cases and to keep people talking about them, because knowledge is power. You may look at these investigations and say that they don't matter, that nothing counts, that we're not investigators, but we're getting people to think about these stories, to bring them up, to talk about them with their own families, in the hope that somebody knows something. And in some of these cases, to keep pressure on local authorities to continue the investigations, to not abandon hope. We want to show people out there, whether they're armchair detectives or victims' family members, that some people out here in the general public still care about these cases, and that we also demand that answers one day be found. But we can't talk about Brandon's disappearance without first investigating the story itself. So I don't know about you guys, but how I sleep at night depends heavily on the mattress that I'm sleeping on. So I travel all the time for work. I'm gone like half of every month. And when I'm traveling, I'm staying in hotels, Airbnbs. I know from the moment that I lay down on a bed, whether I'm going to sleep well or have an absolutely horrible night of sleep. Just recently on my last trip, I slept on a bed that was literally as hard as a rock, and it interrupted my sleep cycle. I couldn't fall asleep. It was just horrible. And in contrast, at another Airbnb on another recent trip, I slept on one of the most amazing, incredible mattresses. It was so good that actually I talked to one of the people I was traveling with the next morning and said, wow, can you believe how nice these mattresses are? And it turns out that that bed was from Helix Sleep. Honestly, I do not know another time I've gotten better sleep than when I was sleeping on that Helix mattress, and that's why I've chosen to include a Helix mattress in my own home. Helix Sleep aims to change the way that people sleep by bringing customation to the sleep category through individually personalized, custom-made mattresses. So when you get a mattress through Helix Sleep, you can hone in that mattress to exactly the preferences that you like, and it's created just for you. Maybe you like really hard beds, maybe you like really soft beds, you like them a certain length, how cushy they are. Helix has lived and breathed creating the most comfortable, high-quality bedding products for years, and also offers pillows, bases, and bedding. So there's so many different ways you can customize your Helix mattress. When I went through and created my mattress, I chose some add-ons that would help keep the mattress cool throughout the night, and let me tell you, it absolutely works. And ever since upgrading to a Helix sleep bed, I've been getting the best nights of sleep possibly imaginable. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. You spend so much of your life on a mattress. Why not invest in a very, very nice one that is custom tailored to your needs so that when you wake up in the morning, you're actually refreshed? So right now, if you want to give Helix Sleep a try and get yourself a new mattress or maybe some new pillows or bedding, using my QR code on the screen, you can get access to the President's Day sale. The Helix President's Day sale is live now. Helix is offering my followers an exclusive partner offer for President's Day. Visit helixsleep.com disappearancesupply.com/paranormalfiles to get 27% off your mattress. You can also use the link in the description or in my pinned comment. So if you want to upgrade your nighttime experience, if you want to sleep as comfortably as I'm sleeping every single night, I cannot recommend that you give Helix Sleep and their mattresses and pillows and bedding a try. Like I said, the link's in the description, but let's get back to our show. Brandon Swanson was your typical Minnesotan kid, a young man full of energy, passion, and excitement for the future. A native of Marshall, Minnesota, situated in Lyon County in southwestern Minnesota, Brandon successfully completed his secondary education at Marshall High School in 2007. Following graduation, he opted to pursue studies in wind energy technology at the Minnesota West Community and Technical College campus in Canby, dedicating a year to this specialized field. Now, academic sessions at Minnesota West concluded for the year on May 13th, 2008. And in celebration, on the night of May 13th, 2008, Brandon commenced his planned celebrations at a small house party in Lind, Minnesota, attended by several of his friends and school acquaintances. Having recently completed a year-long vocational certification program in wind energy, Brandon was on the brink of graduation. That night at the house in Lind, he attended a modest social function described by attendees as an informal assembly of close companions. While he did indeed drink at this party, and throughout the evening ingested an undetermined amount of alcohol, one friend of Brandon's later on characterized the atmosphere of the party as subdued, and noted that Brandon did not at any point appear to be heavily impaired. In other words, yes, Brandon had been drinking that night, but according to those who knew him and saw him that evening, Brandon was not incredibly drunk, at least not to the naked eye. He wasn't staggering around, slurring his words, slurring his speech. Nobody was worried for him. He just seemed like, a normal guy at the party celebrating the end of the school year. Between approximately 10:30 and 11 p.m., Brandon left that first gathering at the house in Lind unaccompanied and headed over to another friend's home in the nearby town of Canby to bid farewell to a fellow student. Reports indicate that during his brief visit to this second social gathering, Brandon consumed an additional 1 shot of whiskey. His stay at the party was brief, and shortly after midnight, he set off on his journey back to Marshall, Minnesota. This was the very last time that anyone would ever see Brandon Swanson. Now, Highway 68 is a 2-lane thoroughfare that extends southeast from Canby to Marshall, Minnesota, and that was the most direct route to Brandon's intended destination that evening, a road that Brandon had navigated on numerous occasions in the past. However, evidence suggests that on that evening, Brandon deviated from his usual route and instead chose to drive down a network of rural gravel roads situated slightly northeast of the highway. It's believed that Brandon chose to take this alternate route home to avoid law enforcement officers. As he had been drinking that evening, it isn't that hard to believe why he would have chosen to take the back roads instead of the main road, the highway, that evening. But this obviously meant that instead of driving down a well-lit paved highway, Brandon would now be driving, slightly under the influence, down a series of dark, twisting country roads. And adding to the difficulty of this route, the gravel roads in that area don't run parallel to the highway. Rather, they intersect it at oblique angles, necessitating multiple sequential turns in a staggered configuration, meaning that he would be making some quick turns in the dark instead of essentially traveling straight back home. So Brandon had 2 options. He could either have taken the highway that he knew like the back of his hand all the way home, which was essentially, a straight shot. It was well lit, it was paved, but he would have possibly run into law enforcement. He was drinking that night, so that's why everybody believes that he took the, basically unlit gravel back roads. Now, I'm from South Dakota, and this story actually took place about an hour and 20 minutes away from my hometown, so I know what the gravel roads are like outside of these towns, and especially in small communities like, Lind and Canby. They are really just dirt roads flanked by, cornfields or whatever crops are growing. It's like a gravel path. There are no lights. There are no signs. These are just like, kind of twisting and turning hills of gravel that you have to, pay attention to while you're driving. Ultimately that night, Brandon arrived at a minimally maintained field road, which extended westward for approximately 1 mile. This unpaved gravel road, flanked on each side by expansive agricultural fields, was ill-suited for conventional vehicular travel. And this was where Brandon would unfortunately make some sort of a mistake. You see, while traveling down this road, at one point Brandon attempted to transition southward back onto a gravel road, misjudged the approach, and inadvertently drove himself into a roadside ditch. And this was a horrible place for Brandon to get his car stuck at, because the incline at this location was shallow, yet abrupt enough to immobilize the vehicle's undercarriage, rendering it incapable of moving either forward or backward. He was stuck on the side of the road, unable to move the vehicle or himself. The incident, where Brandon crashed his car into the ditch, according to records, occurred at approximately 1:15 a.m. Interestingly, the vehicle sustained no apparent damage, and there was no evidence of injury within the interior. After getting his car stuck in the ditch, Brandon initially attempted to contact 2 or 3 friends on his phone. He was calling frantically, trying to see who would pick up, but it was late at night, and when nobody answered his calls, he placed a phone call to his parents. The time at the beginning of that phone call was approximately 1:54 a.m. Talking over the phone to his mother and father, Brandon conveyed to them that he was stranded in a ditch somewhere between Marshall and Lind, and tried to provide them with his location so that they could come pick him up. Between 1:54 and 2:17 a.m., multiple calls were exchanged between Brandon and his parents as they attempted to locate him. But even though Brandon was providing them with clues to his location, they couldn't pinpoint exactly where he was at. And that's because at multiple points, Brandon told them incorrect information about his whereabouts. In one instance, he told his parents that he, at the time, was positioned just off of Highway 23. This was found to be incorrect, however, as he was actually located near Highway 68. He seemed to be confused and, in a way, dazed at the moment. And despite their best efforts, even though Brandon was describing what he saw around him and where he believed that he was, his parents were unable to locate him. There's been a lot of discussion about what caused Brandon to be so confused about where he was that evening. One likely explanation is that a mix of 5 key factors contributed to his disorientation. The exhaustion from the lateness of the hour, at least some level of intoxication, especially since his blood alcohol level was still increasing from his last drink in Canby. Alright guys, so I'm sorry for the sudden jump cut and the change of shirt, but I finished this entire recording last evening, and when I went around to check on my camera, I realized that I had forgotten to format the memory card, which meant that it didn't record any of what I'm about to go through, which is like the major chunk of the script. So it's the next day. I'm supposed to be editing right now, but I'm redoing this whole thing. That's why my shirt has changed and everything. But anyways, let's just dig back in. So immediately after receiving their first phone call from Brandon, his parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, hopped into their pickup truck and began heading towards where their son was telling them that he had crashed his vehicle. And they kept heading in his supposed direction, even though their calls to Brandon kept either dropping or being hung up. At the time, Brandon even told his parents that he was sitting by his car, flashing his headlights on and off in an attempt to try to help them find him. But it was to no avail. Annette and Brian saw no sign of Brandon anywhere in the immediate area. Now, I have to say, too, like I said, I grew up in South Dakota. I know these dirt roads. I know country roads like this. My grandmother, before she passed away, she lived on a farm way out in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota. And I'm talking like 45 minutes outside of Fargo, purely down dirt roads, like middle of nowhere. And a lot of these lands are pretty flat and they're pitch black at night. There are no lights, there are no towns. So if Annette and Brian were driving around looking for Brandon and he was flashing his brights on and off, I feel like if they were close to where he was at that time, or if they would have been in the area, they would have seen the lights. Somebody would have seen the lights because it's so dark. It would have been like lightning flashing throughout the landscape. But yeah, they didn't see the lights. Nobody saw the lights. And so at 2:17 a.m. from inside the pickup, Brandon's mother called him again. Growing frustrated with not being found, Brandon then told his parents that he was going to start walking towards some city lights that he saw, which he believed were coming from the nearby town of Lind. And so Brandon told his parents that he was going to start walking toward what he believed was Lind, and he asked his parents to meet him in the parking lot of the Lindwood Tavern, a local bar. Shortly afterwards, the call dropped again, and after being disconnected, Brandon's parents called him and began another phone conversation at approximately 2:23 a.m. During this call, Brandon and his father stayed on the phone for 47 minutes. Over the phone, dictating what he was seeing to his parents, Brandon described his walk, saying he was following a gravel road away from Marshall toward Lind. At one point, he told them that he had left the road and started cutting across fields. This will be a faster route, he told his parents. He was just taking a shortcut. Over the phone, he mentioned to them that he had come across 2 fences and that at one point he heard running water nearby. Then, at exactly 3:10 a.m., Brandon interrupted himself and suddenly yelled out, "Oh shit!" And then the call went silent. His father later recalled hearing what sounded like Brandon's foot slipping right before the call cut off, but then afterwards, nothing. The only thing that Brandon's parents heard on the other end of the line was silence, before eventually they had to hang up and end the phone call themselves so they could call him back. In a frantic move, Brandon's parents attempted to call him over and over again, trying to reestablish contact with their son. However, repeated attempts to call Brandon back were unsuccessful, and he never picked up the phone again. In fact, this would be the very last time that anyone heard from or saw Brandon ever again. His final words, "oh shit," remain an intriguing part of this mystery that no one has been able to fully explain to this very day. In the early hours of May 14th, the weather was mostly clear with a light wind of 6 to 9 miles per hour. The temperature was around 46 degrees Fahrenheit and dropped at one point to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The moon was in its third quarter phase, positioned to the west of where Brandon likely was, and was setting when the call ended. Even after the phone call disconnected, the search continued for Brandon's parents. In fact, Brandon's parents continued searching for him all night, but by 6:30 a.m., they had become more concerned and decided to call the Lyon County Sheriff's Office to officially report him missing. But the local authorities weren't too interested in helping the Swanson family at that time. In fact, the Swansons were told at first that it was hardly unusual for young men Brandon's age to stay out all night after the last day of college classes. It was completely normal for them to disappear for the night, they claimed. He had probably been drunk and had passed out somewhere. They'd find him soon enough. And additionally, when the Swansons pushed back on the authorities and their hesitancies to help search for Brandon, Annette Swanson specifically recalled that one of the officers told them that it was Brandon's, quote, right to be missing. But Brandon never awoke from a drunken stupor and called his parents. He never emerged from the darkness, hungover, and made his way back home. And the search for Brandon began soon afterwards. Based on information from Brandon's family and media sources, law enforcement issued an attempt to locate request for both Brandon and his car. The Lyon County Sheriff's Office also contacted Brandon's cell phone provider to get location data. However, because it was still early in the morning, the carrier's offices weren't open yet, so no immediate information was available. Once the phone company opened that day, they quickly determined that Brandon's phone had last connected to a tower just south of Minneota, Minnesota. And this immediately led authorities to shift their search to that area. At around 12:30 p.m., a Lyon County Sheriff's deputy found Brandon's abandoned car in a ditch about 1.5 miles north of Minnesota Highway 68. Near the border of Lyon and Lincoln counties.
Annette Swanson is joining us. She is the mother of Brandon Swanson, joining us from Minnesota. You were on the phone with your son a large part of those early hours when you were trying to find him, and he was trying to find you. He wasn't hurt at all, right? I mean, the car went into a ditch, but he seemed to be okay.
Correct. He said he was fine, that he was not injured. And, in fact, when we did find his vehicle, there was no damage to it. It was simply muddy from being on a gravel road, but no damage to the vehicle.
What was it like that night to be going through this and so close to your son, but so far from your son?
Yeah, as Brandon tried to explain to us where his location was, and he was extremely sure of himself. He felt confident in where he was at, and that we were the ones that were confused about, how to get to him. And as the conversation went on, as the minutes ticked by, it came to a point where as long as Brandon was on the phone, as long as he was talking, as long as we had contact, it was okay. We would be okay. But the minute that call dropped, I just became sick. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was very, very bad, and just could hardly fathom, what was happening at that point.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, to take a breath. Now, when the call just hung up like that with Brandon in dire distress, I mean, those were the words that he seemed to utter when he said, "Oh." Did you try to call him after that, and what happened?
Oh, yes, we did. You know, we didn't immediately hang up the phone. We called his name. We tried to, thinking that he still had the phone, that it was very near him, that he could pick it up, he'd hear our voice, and we called out to him several times, and we realized, he's not there. We did. We called him back several times, thinking, he'll see the phone light up. Even if he didn't have it on ring, he would see his phone light up when the call came in, and he'd find it. He'd answer the call, and it just didn't happen. Time and again, it just went unanswered.
What time did you finally call police?
I finally called the sheriff's department at approximately 6:30 in the morning.
So right when the sun was coming up.
The exact location of the car was recorded using universal transverse Mercator coordinates, and this discovery became the key starting point for the next phase of the search, as investigators tried to figure out Brandon's final movements and what had happened to him. Strangely, there's been little information leaked to the public to this day about exactly what efforts were executed on that first day in the search for Brandon. According to a media report, local law enforcement requested assistance from a search canine unit in Chippewa County, but the specific findings of this dog remain unknown. Additionally, it's documented that Brandon's vehicle was towed away on the first day of the search. Unfortunately, on the morning of May 14th, road grading operations were conducted in the area, which inadvertently erased any potential footprints or other trace evidence that could have been useful in the search for Brandon. So incredibly poor timing on that. The county was actually doing road grading and road maintenance that morning, so any footprints, any tire tracks, maybe if there was even blood that had dripped out of Brandon from some sort of an injury, I don't know what they would have found, but those maintenance cars cleared all of that stuff, off of the gravel roads. So any of that evidence that could have existed was immediately bulldozed. And so the day of May 14th, 2008 ended, and nobody had found a single trace of Brandon Swanson. It was literally as if he had vanished into thin air. Interestingly, though, Lyon County Sheriff Joel Dahl noted that from a general vicinity of the search area, a red beacon atop a grain elevator in the nearby town of Taunton was clearly visible. It was theorized at the time that Brandon may have mistaken this distant red light for Lind, Minnesota, leading him to believe he was closer to town than he actually was. But it is bizarre. There weren't any immediate big city lights, popping out anywhere. No light pollution, nothing crazy that authorities noticed that would have made sense with what Brandon was telling his parents. He was telling them he was walking towards the bright lights, the bright city lights, and they just didn't see what Brandon, could have necessarily been talking about based on where his car crashed. The next day, on May 15th, 2008, at approximately 11 a.m., members of the Codington County Search, Dive, and Rescue Team arrived in town at the request of the Lyon County Sheriff's Office. Initial efforts to find which direction Brandon had traveled in on the night of his disappearance using scent tracking dogs proved to be unsuccessful. However, once the dog's handlers switched to a different scent article, basically used a different item of Brandon's to try to determine his scent and track that scent, one bloodhound was able to pick up a trail. The dog led search teams south from Brandon's abandoned vehicle for half a mile before turning west onto nearby 390th Street. The trail then proceeded 1 mile west, turned north onto County Road 16 for another half mile, and veered west again onto the driveway of a deserted farm. From there, Brandon's scent continued for a quarter of a mile before leaving the driveway and following the Yellow Medicine River northwest. At one point, the bloodhound entered and then exited the river, leading its handler to suspect that Brandon may have fallen into the water at that location. However, the scent trail was picked up beyond the river, moving toward a drainage area and eventually stopping near a gravel road marking the boundary between Lincoln and Yellow Medicine counties. This showed authorities that, even though it appeared that Brandon had stumbled into the river, it seemed as though he had crawled out and continued on his walk towards what he believed was a nearby town. Interestingly, the bloodhound's findings align with Brandon's 47-minute phone conversation with his father. Throughout their discussion, Brandon described traveling along gravel roads before deciding to cut across open, grassy land. Over the phone, Brandon mentioned encountering 2 fence lines and hearing nearby running water. The search terrain in the area near the river is rugged, covered with dense vegetation, and scattered with animal dens. Additionally, Brandon was congenitally blind in his left eye, which likely affected his depth perception, especially in the low light conditions that he was working with on the night of his disappearance. Given that the moon was setting at the time that he vanished, Brandon would have been left to navigate the rugged terrain that evening in near total darkness. If one factors in an average walking speed of 1 to 3 miles per hour, then Brandon could have been anywhere from 3/4 of a mile to 2.5 miles away from his car when the phone call abruptly ended. The point where the dog entered and exited the river falls within that estimated range. To some people who study this case, it seems the most plausible that Brandon may have stumbled upon an unseen hazard, tripped or lost his balance while navigating the rugged and uneven terrain. In the process, he may have dropped and broken his phone, whether due to water exposure, impact damage, battery displacement, or simply an inability to locate it in the dark. In addition to the bloodhound, 2 other search dogs scoured the area near Brandon's vehicle and along the Yellow Medicine River. Numerous spontaneous volunteers joined the search, and a team from the Department of Natural Resources conducted a boat patrol along the river. The strongest theory, based on the bloodhound's tracking results, suggests that Brandon may have fallen into the river and drowned. While this remains a primary focus of search efforts, alternative possibilities do exist. For instance, Brandon may have lost or broken his phone and just continued to walk. Notably, despite the bloodhound entering the river, it later exited and continued tracking purposefully, implying that the scent trail did indeed persist beyond the water's edge. The dog followed the trail up to another gravel road before it suddenly and abruptly lost the scent, which could indicate either an extended trek or the natural limits of the bloodhound's scent tracking abilities. Given that the trail stretched over 3 miles, it's considered a relatively extensive tracking result. Following the initial search, which yielded no definitive evidence of Brandon's whereabouts, most formal efforts were suspended. However, Sheriff Jack Vizecki, a law enforcement official who has remained committed to finding Brandon over the years, maintained a persistent search, systematically walking a 2-mile stretch of the Yellow Medicine River daily for a duration of 30 days. Meanwhile, the Swanson family continued to leave their porch light illuminated each night, an enduring gesture symbolizing their hope that Brandon would either return or be located. However, as you know, Brandon never came home. How sad is that? His family leaves an actual light on their porch, hoping that one day Brandon will make his way back home. He's lost somewhere. He doesn't know where he is. They're hoping that he just knows how to find his way home, so they left the light on just in case one day he came back. But unfortunately, it's been almost 20 years and no trace of Brandon has ever been found. So search operations recommenced later that autumn, once the crops planted shortly after Brandon's disappearance had been harvested. Cadaver dogs deployed during these renewed efforts at one point actually detected potential traces of human remains in an area northwest of Porter, Minnesota, an area which had not been previously examined. These efforts were further intensified that next spring, during the interval between the thawing of winter snow and the onset of the next planting season, a cyclical process that persisted through the year 2011. By the year 2011, approximately 122 square miles of the area surrounding the location of Brandon's disappearance had been systematically searched by law enforcement, local authorities, and volunteers alike, but no trace of Brandon was ever located. Not a single piece of clothing, not a shred of DNA, not even his cell phone. He completely vanished. In 2010, jurisdiction over the case was assumed by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which became the lead investigative agency tasked with solving the case. The Bureau, shortly afterwards, established a dedicated tip line specifically for the case of Brandon Swanson, through which 90 leads had been reported by 2015. As investigative efforts continued, the primary area of focus shifted towards Mud Creek, a tributary of the Yellow Medicine River situated north and northwest of Porter. But still, to this day, no trace of Brandon has ever been found. So, that's incredibly bizarre. This whole thing is bizarre. So, Courtney, my wife, and I co-host the podcast Murder in America. We've done tons of in-depth, really thoroughly researched stories on people that have disappeared. I've consumed tons of media and read books by authors like David Paulides examining missing persons cases. On my TikTok account, where I have almost 3.5 million followers, I post almost every single day a different true crime case, and I've covered so many stories of people that have gone missing. But what's incredibly strange to me is that in almost all of these cases that I've covered, either on Conspiracy Files, Murder in America, my TikTok, my Instagram, here on the Paranormal Files, they find something from the person. the person doesn't just vanish into thin air. And that's what's insane to me about this case is how have they never found Brandon's phone? How have they never found any of his clothing? How have they never found him or even any trace of him? None of this stuff adds up. And then you clearly have this oh shit moment where something happens to Brandon. But then what's really strange and ominous to me is that it just goes completely silent. There's no sounds afterwards. So it's weird because the call didn't drop. The phone didn't hang up. The call just went completely silent after he screamed that out. We need to take a look at some of the theories now behind Brandon's disappearance before we move on to finding evidence of our own. I mean, what possibly could have happened to him? That's something we're going to look into right now. So Jeff Haas is a search and rescue expert who gathered a lot of the information that I'm presenting to you in this episode. Jeff actually posted a very thorough paper online that you can go read yourself about Brandon's disappearance, analyzing a lot of the factors and, compiling a lot of the information. So I want to thank Jeff for his contributions to this case and for what he did with that paper. I also want to give him credit for the work that he did. But something that I really liked about the paper that Jeff published was some of the theories were spelled out in the paper, and then he helped provide some arguments for and arguments against that people commonly cite when it comes to these theories. So we're going to examine a few of these theories that Jeff presents in his paper, and then we're going to move on to more theories that I gathered information on through independent research using newspaper articles, online forums, all sorts of different things. And it's really bizarre. And I really would like you guys, if you're watching this episode, please leave me a long comment talking about what you think happened to Brandon. I want to start discussions in the chat. I want to start discussions in the comment section. I want people to comment on other people's comments, because the main reason, like I said before, why we do so many of these episodes is to keep these people's names in the public consciousness. I don't want to let these things fade away and disappear. The Swanson family deserves justice, and they deserve for their son to be found. I mean, I can't imagine the pain that they've felt all these years. And at this point, when there's literally zero resolution in this case, I think that it's totally fair to examine, all these different possibilities, things that may have happened, even things that are non-traditional. We're going to talk about some of that stuff in a little bit, but please keep this story alive and let me know what your thoughts are about these theories in the comments section. So all these theories are going to basically be what people think happened to Brandon after he yelled out, "Oh shit." So it's pretty well documented, Brandon was alive and well. He was walking. His location data was tracked. And then all of a sudden he yelled out, "Oh shit." And that's when the phone call, went dead. So that's where all the question lies, is what happened after he screamed that out and what caused him to scream that out. And that's what we're going to be examining. So the first theory that people believe in is theory number 1. Brandon's phone call went dead and he exclaimed, "Oh shit," because he fell into a nearby river. His phone was fried in the cold waters, and unable to escape the water himself, Brandon drowned. Now, there are a few potential locations where this drowning may have happened, and those locations include the Yellow Medicine River, located to the south and west, Mud Creek, situated to the north, and really any of the smaller drainage ditches spread throughout the area. Now, some of the evidence that supports this theory includes the fact that Brandon mentioned hearing running water during his phone conversation, and the fact that the scent dogs tracked Brandon's scent to the Yellow Medicine River. Now, drowning would explain why no physical evidence of Brandon's presence has ever been found, as it would have been swept away with him downstream to an unknown location. And in addition, searching bodies of water is incredibly difficult, making it possible that he has not yet been located within the 0.75 to 2.5 mile radius of his last known position. However, critics of the theory point out that even though Brandon's phone call abruptly ended, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was unable to continue walking afterwards. Extensive searches have been conducted within the suspected area, especially along the Yellow Medicine River, without success. This suggests that he probably ended up elsewhere. In addition, after Brandon disappeared, boats from the state's Department of Natural Resources were deployed to conduct a systematic search along the river, and water control gates were installed to manage flow and facilitate search efforts. Yes, gates were literally installed in key parts of the rivers where it was determined that if Brandon had fallen in, they would have caught his body. They literally put gates, metal in the rivers, essentially like a trap. So if Brandon's body or anything related to Brandon, articles of clothing, his cell phone, something, his shoes, any of that, if that had floated down the river that he, according to this theory, fell into, then those gates would have caught that and we would have found it by now. But the gates never provided any additional evidence. And in certain locations within Lincoln County, water levels had reached a depth of 10 feet on the morning that Swanson disappeared, but had since receded, according to the sheriff at the time. That meant that there would have been less flow and less movement that could have swept Brandon's body away. So the river was pretty high on the morning that Brandon disappeared, but then it dropped. It dropped way lower. So he definitely would have washed up somewhere in a lot of people's minds. Additionally, law enforcement personnel patrolled the riverbanks on foot, while equestrian units and all-terrain vehicles were utilized to extend search efforts into the surrounding terrain, and they found no trace of him. Now, I personally don't believe that Brandon drowned in the river. I feel like they would have found at least a part of him, like his clothes, some of his DNA, his body, his cell phone, anything at this point. And it also doesn't explain how his scent trail continued out of the river. Remember, that scent tracking dog went into the river and then it went out and all of a sudden it stopped at that gravel road. I understand why people would believe in this theory, but it's just, I think that that's too simple of an explanation for what happened here. Then you have theory number 2, which claims that after proclaiming, "Oh shit," Brandon may have tripped and sustained an injury, which rendered him unable to move, and he later died due to exposure to the elements. Now, proponents of this theory claim that given the cold night and the light clothing that Brandon was wearing, a person unable to move would almost certainly have succumbed to hypothermia. But critics of this theory say that if Brandon had indeed remained in one place within the search radius, like for example, if he broke his leg and he couldn't move further than, where he had broken his leg, or if he had injured himself and he had been forced to crawl somewhere, he likely would have been found by now. I mean, he definitely would have been with how deep they have searched this area and how large the search radius is. Now, skeptics also claim that yes, Brandon may have slipped and lost his phone, but if he survived that moment, he almost certainly continued walking. It's not like he would have, lost his phone and then said, "Oh shit, well, I'm just gonna lay down here and die." He would have kept walking. I also don't believe this theory because I think it's once again too simple. And if he would have laid down and died somewhere, they would have found him by now. They would have found his phone, they would have found Brandon, they would have found his clothing, they would have found some sort of remains. But we have to move on to theory number 3. So theory number 3 states that Brandon may have gotten wet from falling into the river, from walking through wet grass or sweating, which led to hypothermia over time and then subsequent death. Now, people who believe in this theory state that there's no guarantee that Brandon stopped moving once his phone cut out. Phones, as we all know, are fragile and can be easily dropped or damaged. And despite extensive searches within the estimated range, Brandon has not been found, which has led many people to believe that he's, in fact, nowhere in the immediate area. According to Robert Coaster in Lost Person Behavior, studies show that in many missing person cases, searches often fail to check beyond the statistical median range. In this case, the median distance is 1.3 miles, which has already been searched very thoroughly. And this means that there's still a 50% chance that Brandon is located somewhere beyond that distance. But critics who don't believe in this theory state that, once again, Brandon was walking on foot that evening. So even if he had succumbed to hypothermia, his body would have been located by now, somewhere in the area. And also, they have thoroughly searched every parcel of land, well, almost every, we're going to talk about that in a second, in that area. 120 plus square mile radius of search area and still no trace of Brandon. So I think if he had just laid down and died somewhere, he definitely would have been found by now. But we need to move on. So theory number 4, and this is a pretty popular theory, states that while walking, Brandon may have fallen into an old well, an outdated cistern, or an underground storage tank, was thus trapped and was unable to escape. This theory claims that Brandon was trapped down there, he died down there, and that's where his body remains to this day. People who believe in this theory claim that this would explain why his body has never been found. He fell into some deep sort of hole, a hole that is well hidden within the Minnesotan terrain, and he's been trapped there ever since. In addition, they claim that that's why Brandon's father heard the sound of a shoe sliding or slipping before the call dropped. However, skeptics state that most residential wells in the area are too small. On average, they're only around 4 to 6 inches in diameter. So half a foot. I want you to imagine how small half a foot is. I think that's about 6 inches. Yeah, a foot, way too small for a person to fall into. And larger wells for municipal or commercial use are extremely rare in that rural region and are typically enclosed within buildings and surrounded by fences/security measures and typically lighting. The only kind of well large enough for an adult to fall into would be a hand-dug stone or wood-lined well, which would likely be over a century old and would probably have collapsed by now. Finding an intact well in that part of Minnesota would be incredibly rare, especially with the weather conditions, the constant freezing and thawing and flooding, and all of the weather that, has existed over the last century in Minnesota, and it's just unlikely. In addition, Minnesota law has required abandoned wells and cisterns to be sealed for years. Yes, that's an actual law in Minnesota, stating that if you have an abandoned well on your property, by law, you have to go out there and seal that and make sure that it's not a hazard, or you can face huge fines. A law which also reduced the likelihood of such a hazard existing in the search area. Now, while old cisterns are more common than old wells, they're often covered with rotting wooded lids that could give way. But despite thorough searches of the few remaining abandoned farmsteads in that area, including the abandoned farm that Brandon's scent was tracked to, no such hazards, not even one abandoned well or cistern, have been found. You see, many old farm sites in the region have been completely removed to make room for agricultural use, making it completely unlikely that Brandon encountered such a structure. And I think that that's crazy. It totally makes sense, and I totally understand why some people would believe in that theory, but to me it just doesn't make sense. The statistical likelihood that you would be walking through a field and just happen to step on an old well that's never crumbled, it's never been sealed off, it's completely unmarked, and it's just sitting there out in the open waiting for somebody to walk into it like a death trap. I just don't think that that's very likely, especially with how farmers, pay attention to their land and they love their land, and that's a rural agricultural, farming area. These farmers that live in that area who, wanted to help solve this case, if they had an old abandoned well on their property, I'm almost going to guarantee you that they would have known where it was on their land, and they would have led investigators to it. It just doesn't make sense to me that on some farmer's property somewhere off in the deep, there's not even really deep woods in that area, but somewhere there's a huge hole in the ground that nobody has ever looked into, in the search for Brandon. That does not make sense to me personally, but I understand why some people would believe that's the case. Now, theory number 5 states that Brandon may have been picked up by someone and taken out of the search area, and that he may have been harmed by whoever picked him up. In this scenario, some phantom kidnapper happened to be at the right place at the right time and decided that on that evening they were going to abduct and kill Brandon Swanson. Now, the proponents of this theory don't really have evidence. It's more circumstantial. The fact that Brandon yelled, "Oh shit," and the lack of any evidence relating to Brandon being found has led some to believe that he may have been physically taken and transported out of the area by an individual or group of persons with nefarious intentions. However, skeptics state that the chance of encountering a violent individual in such a rural area, especially in the middle of the night on a weekday, is quite low. While nothing in this world is truly impossible, it just seems unlikely to me that Brandon would have come across someone who was ready to abduct and murder a random person at that very moment. Some people also believe that Brandon may have been abducted by sex traffickers, but the skeptics kind of state the same things about that theory. There's no real evidence and no real reason to believe that that would be the case. Theory number 6 states that on that evening, Brandon may have hitched a ride from someone and started a new life elsewhere. Evidence for this theory doesn't really exist. It's just a thought or a concept. There's been no trace of Brandon ever found or recovered anywhere on Earth. If he had really escaped the area and started a new life, I believe that someone would have seen him or reported seeing him by now. In addition, at the time of his vanishing, he had his whole life ahead of him. He had a loving family and good friends. And also, skeptics state that Brandon didn't appear to have any financial resources, means of support, or a prior intent to disappear voluntarily. He didn't have the money to disappear, he had no reason to disappear, so I don't know why he would make himself disappear. Now, one of the most popular modern theories, theory number 7, is that Brandon may have accidentally been run over by a farm vehicle the next morning after laying down in a field due to exhaustion or hypothermia. This is a theory that I've heard and seen discussed many times online about this case. So the theory basically states that Brandon indeed was suffering from, hypothermia or some form of exhaustion. Maybe he got out of the river and he was soaking wet and, it dropped to almost freezing temperatures. So maybe he lied down in a field. So maybe on that evening he went to lay down in a field. He wanted to take a nap and he either fell into a really heavy slumber or he died. Then this theory states that after that, in the morning, a farmer who got up early at the crack of dawn to go work the fields was operating his farm equipment, and he accidentally ran over Brandon's body as he was laying in the field. People who believe this theory also believe that after having run over and mutilated Brandon's body, the farmer may have chosen to cover up the accident rather than report it. Interestingly, I will say this, there is some compelling evidence for this theory. This kind of ties into what we talked about before. Like I said, about Brandon laying down and the hypothermia that people believe he may have experienced. But this theory posits that shortly afterwards, that farmer that was working on their field after Brandon laid down ran him over with a large piece of equipment. Imagine like a combine or something like that. And interestingly, one of those scent dogs actually led investigators to a nearby farm when they were searching for Brandon. And Brandon's scent was reportedly detected on a piece of farm equipment there. And interestingly enough, the owner of that farm property was hesitant to allow a full search of his land. To this day, actually, the farmer has never allowed investigators to thoroughly search his property. This is a real fact of the case that has always stuck out to me as being a bit odd. You see, if Brandon had indeed collapsed or lied down to go to sleep in a field and was accidentally run over, the farmer may have feared incoming legal repercussions. I mean, he possibly could have been facing a murder charge for brutally butchering a young man in his field. And according to this theory, like I said, the farmer may have disposed of Brandon's remains secretly. Feeding remains to livestock, in fact, would be a possible and viable method of covering up evidence. On Murder in America, we've talked about murderous farmers that have fed corpses to pigs, so it's not too far-fetched, and the fact that the guy won't allow a search of his property is just bizarre. However, skeptics claim that no direct evidence has been found to support this theory. No DNA, no body, nothing. They also state that even if Brandon had been in a field, it's unclear why he would not have been found before morning and why he wouldn't have been awoken by the roaring sounds of farming equipment. There's also no direct evidence, and that's all pretty circumstantial stuff. Maybe the dog was confused. Maybe the farmer just doesn't want agents tearing up his land. I don't blame him for that. But it is odd, everybody else in that immediate area opened up their properties, opened up their land, invited the search teams to come in and thoroughly look for Brandon because they knew how big of a deal this was. I mean, this was like national news. And this one farmer just didn't want to let them come take a look at what was going on there. So, I don't know. That's weird. But we need to move on. Theory number 8 claims that while walking, Brandon came across something that he should not have seen. Possibly a drug deal of some sort, some form of criminal activity, or even a rape or a crime in progress. It's believed by some that that's the reason why Brandon shouted, "Oh shit," in surprise. He may have then dropped or disconnected his phone, was chased, and was then abducted and killed by the criminal who was caught in the act. It's also posited by some believers in this theory that Brandon may have accidentally walked into the wrong field or farm property, maybe a local farm that was growing illegal substances or plants, and that the farmer, trying to maintain control over his operation and the secrecy that they cultivated, murdered Brandon in an attempt to keep the police away from their property. It's interesting. I've heard a lot of people say this, maybe Brandon was walking through a field and he came across something he shouldn't have seen. He looks up, he sees this farmer holding up a shotgun pointed at him, and he yells out, "Oh shit." Boom. The farmer shoots Brandon. At the same time, the bullet, if it's a shotgun, the spread may have taken out Brandon's cell phone, which could have led to the silence. There's also the thought that maybe the farmer, snuck up on Brandon if he was looking at something he shouldn't have seen and clocked him in the back of the head with a shovel. It's unknown. But once again, there's no direct evidence to support this theory other than the theory itself. But then again, in this case, there really isn't any evidence at all. The evidence that exists mainly exists to debunk other theories. So I'm not completely ruling that one out. It's also been reported in various outlets that when Brandon's car was discovered, it was found with the doors wide open. Were the doors opened after the fact by criminals looking to cover their tracks? Why were the doors all open in the first place? Another question that I have is, did they ever check the car for any fingerprints or DNA evidence? To my knowledge, they did not. But we have to move on. Another theory, theory number 9, states that Brandon may have been walking down the road where he was run over and killed by someone who was driving home late at night that evening. Brandon was possibly crossing that dirt road where his scent ended and someone was speeding down the road, maybe with their lights off. They could have been drinking and driving since it was that time of night after bars closed. They hit Brandon, they killed Brandon, and then the driver panicked, packed up Brandon's body, and sped away. And once again, to reiterate, on the morning of May 14th, the morning that Brandon went missing, road grading operations were conducted in that immediate area, which inadvertently erased any potential footprints or other trace evidence that could have been useful in the search for Brandon. So, if there were other tire tracks or footprints in any roadways nearby, they were erased before they could have been discovered. And that's interesting. I mean, if Brandon really was hit, you'd imagine there would have been like swerve marks. There would have been, I don't know how you'd even describe that, like a tracks in, the dirt and the gravel in that area. Maybe there even would have been a blood stain or something found, but those road grading operations completely erased any chance of finding stuff like that. But it would explain to some people why Brandon's scent ended in the middle of that dirt road, and then randomly it just vanished. If someone really did hit him there and they put him in the back of their car and drove him off somewhere, I mean, that's totally possible too. An additional theory, theory number 10, states that Brandon may have been being chased on the evening of his disappearance. This theory posits that Brandon took the back roads that evening because he was being pursued by some phantom villain. They also claim that this explains why Brandon swerved his car into a ditch on a very straight, clean-cut road. It is interesting, you're going to see this in the video when we visit the road in just a few minutes. It's a very, very straight road, and it doesn't exactly make sense as to how he ended up in the ditch. I understand that, he may have been trying to do some sort of a maneuver and accidentally went over, into the ditch area, and that's where his car bottomed out essentially. But it is weird because it's a very straight, kind of obvious wide road. It's not like a swerving country back road like you'd see in Ireland or England. Believers in this theory also state that Brandon would not have told his parents if he was being pursued by someone. Maybe he owed someone some money, he had pissed someone off at one of the parties he attended, or he was in with the wrong crowd and they had chased him down to collect on a debt. Once again, there's never been any direct evidence found that would support this theory. But people who believe this theory think that it might have been some sort of a drug debt, that Brandon was late on some sort of a payment. He had, gone in debt with these people that were giving him substances, and for some reason they were really pissed off. He had shorted them and they came to collect. Now, after his disappearance, a pipe was found in Brandon's vehicle. Some people have taken this as evidence or proof that Brandon had used drugs at some point before his death, and that he may have owed someone money or a drug debt. On Reddit, this is interesting, some users have claimed in the past to have been from the area, and have commented about how they've heard local rumblings in the small towns like Lind that Brandon owed a drug debt, that he was found and killed by the dealers that he shorted, and that his body is now buried somewhere in the Dakotas. However, this is all conjecture, and there's no real proof or smoking gun to this theory. Brandon also had no documented struggles with substance abuse, so there's no paper trail to back any of these assertions up. I will state here, though, I do have a friend, I have a friend that got mixed up in the wrong sort of activity for a little while when he was younger, and he was, running with the wrong crowd. He's totally changed now. He's a very good friend of mine, but at one point, this is a real story he told me one time. He said that he was told to show up to this guy's house. My friend was doing stuff without my knowledge. This is when I was living in Texas at the time, and he was back home in South Dakota. So I didn't know that this was all going on. Went to this guy's house who he was buying product from to disperse the product to other people. I'm trying to think if I could say this on YouTube. Let's just say Kush. Maybe that'll go past the thing. My friend was just doing some small time Kush sales, which I didn't know about. But he said that this guy who he would buy the stuff in bulk from told him, "You need to come over to my house right now." So my friend went over to this guy's house in a small town near Sioux Falls, South Dakota. When he went into the guy's house, he said, "You need to come downstairs with me." So he went downstairs to the basement of this home, which was a rental house this guy was in. And my friend said that he saw a human corpse being dissolved in acid. And he said, and this guy told my friend at the time when he was staring at this thing, "This is what happens to you if you f me over." And that was the last straw for my friend. This is why he told me all of this, because he immediately stopped doing what he was doing, realizing how, what a bad road he was on. And yeah, that story's always shocked me, because it's like, where I'm from, that shit doesn't happen. I think there's been 1 or 2 serial killers in the entire, history of South Dakota. There really aren't murders in South Dakota. So to hear a story like that was shocking. So when I was reading this story and I heard, oh, he's buried in the Dakotas somewhere, and I have like a personal connection to a story that I believe to be true because I trust my friend, it's really crazy. And yes, for people that are going to ask, he did call the police and report this whole thing, but they never got back to him and nothing ever happened. But he was legitimately really, really freaked out and fearing for his life for a little while after that story. So anyways, let's get back to Brandon. So there are also some people who believe that the paranormal may have been at play in Brandon's disappearance. Some people claim that Brandon was a part of a bizarre string of disappearances that have happened across the globe, that have been chronicled by researcher David Paulides in his series Missing 411. We could spend the entire episode talking about Missing 411, which we're actually going to be doing a full episode about Missing 411 in the near future, so you should get excited because that one's going to be crazy. But it's worth mentioning here. If you don't know what Missing 411 is, I'd highly recommend you do some independent research, because hearing the details of those stories will change your life and your perception of the world around you. Basically, Missing 411 is this like string of disappearances that have happened across the globe, but so many in America and mainly in like American national parks. People that, like, let's say for an example, I'm here and my friend Joe is right here. Joe's like 20 feet away from me in the woods. We're hunting. We have rifles. We're walking through the woods together. We're talking to each other. I can see him clearly through the trees. And as we're walking, we pass by a big tree trunk. And when I keep walking, all of a sudden Joe stops responding. I turn to my left. Joe's gone. I go over and look for him. There's no trace of him there. Nothing. His clothing isn't there. His gun isn't there. He's just vanished. And from that point on, Joe remains missing forever. That's happened thousands of times in America and Canada and all over the place, but essentially where these people just vanish into thin air. There are a certain set of specific circumstances that, have to exist within the environment for it to be a Missing 411 case, which is why I'm hesitant to call this Missing 411. But this is exactly like what Missing 411 is saying happens. These people completely vanish off the face of the earth, and it's very scary stuff. There are children that have gone missing, adults, men, women, everybody. It can affect anyone, and people think maybe they're being abducted by aliens. There's a whole Missing 411 aliens movie that's really interesting. People think that it could be a slip into an alternate dimension. It's stuff that's absolutely beyond human comprehension. Even weirder than Brandon's disappearance. These stories where it's like literally you're standing next to your friend, you turn your back to go walk in the other direction, and 10 seconds later you turn around and your friend's missing and they're never seen again. It's the most insane shit ever. So some people believe Brandon is one of those cases. He was in nature after all, and he was never found again. But some people also claim that they believe Brandon may have slipped somehow into another dimension. And that explains why no trace of him has ever been located. I do want to express here that we are not trying to trivialize the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. We're not trying to sensationalize any of this. In my opinion, I believe in the paranormal, and I believe in all of these things. I believe people have been abducted by aliens. I believe Missing 411, thousands of people have vanished into thin air with no explanation, which could be aliens, could be dimensional time slips. I don't know what it could be, but I genuinely believe in this stuff, and I feel like in a case like this, when there's no leads and no information, it's like exploring the unknown angles of this are interesting and important, because I just have an open mind, and having an open mind is incredibly important in this line of work. We're not trying to solve crimes here on this channel. We're trying to dig up evidence of our own, especially with crimes where investigators have failed. I'm not necessarily saying there was a failure here, but they have failed to find any trace of Brandon. In a lot of the other cases, we are investigating crimes where detectives have completely ignored evidence, where detectives have been bribed and corrupted, and where perpetrators have been allowed to get away. And the goal of these videos is to raise awareness about this stuff and keep people talking about it in whatever way that we can. I've worked with victims of crimes to help them tell their stories on my podcast, on this upcoming documentary I've spent the last year on, all these different things. I've interviewed perpetrators of crimes to try and get an idea of why they've done these things, and I've even worked with like Nico to expose darker elements of the world. Like, Nico's a dark guy, but these elements of the world are so much darker. It's so dark that even he's disgusted by it, and no one talks about this stuff. So we're just examining things holistically here, and this leads into the final theory. Finally, with all the strangeness surrounding Brandon's disappearance, people have claimed that it's possible that Brandon was abducted into the sky by aliens or some form of intelligence from outer space. They claim that this is why Brandon proclaimed, "Oh shit," and that this is why no trace of him has ever been recovered, which seems to be almost impossible in this day and age. Now, I want you to think of it like this. I don't want you to think that Brandon was walking down the street and this flying saucer like a UFO hovered over him and beamed him up like Star Trek. What I'm positing here, as someone who could potentially believe that this theory could be possible, there have been tons of people who have been abducted by these things. Same with, missing 411, people that just vanish. It's not like a Hollywood movie where these UAPs are like, saucers. This would be like if something from another dimension or just some force or energy that is beyond human comprehension, if that really were to have targeted a guy like Brandon, what I see happening would be like, maybe he saw a glimpse of what was about to happen, but then it's like, boom, gone. Like just a flash and somebody disappears. That's what I think happens with missing 411. So that's what we're examining here, how that could be like a flash of light that abducts someone, not like a, Hollywood UFO. And interestingly, Minnesota has had a long and colorful history of UFO sightings and potential abductions. Now, one of the most shocking UFO encounters in Minnesota history, in fact, was reported to authorities and to national news outlets by Marshall County, Minnesota Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson in 1979. And this story is absolutely insane. So, Officer Val Johnson reported that while conducting a patrol near Stephen, Minnesota at approximately 2 a.m. on August 27, 1979, he observed a concentrated beam of light hovering above the roadway. According to Officer Johnson's account, the beam of light emanating from the sky rapidly advanced towards him, enveloping his squad car in an intense illumination, followed by the distinct sound of breaking glass. Officer Johnson stated that he subsequently lost consciousness for a duration of 39 minutes. Now, upon regaining awareness, he noted that both his wristwatch and the vehicle's clock had ceased functioning for precisely 14 minutes. Upon further examination, and after making an official report to his superiors about the incident, it was determined that Officer Johnson's squad car had indeed sustained multiple damages, including a shattered windshield, a compromised headlight and red emergency light, and a bent thin radio antenna. Responding deputies who were tasked with following up on the report discovered the vehicle positioned sideways on the road, exactly as Johnson had described it. After the alleged encounter, Officer Johnson exhibited physical symptoms, including bruising all over his body and ocular irritation, which a medical professional likened to burns commonly experienced by welders. So, Officer Johnson reported this happening, and he actually showed physical symptoms from it. His eyes were burned, there were bruises all over his body that were unexplainable. And this incident, which was corroborated by law enforcement officers, is regarded as one of the most credible alien encounter stories ever told. And it happened just a few hours away from where Brandon disappeared in Minnesota.
It was 1:40 a.m. Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson was on patrol in rural Marshall County when suddenly he saw a bright light a few feet above ground level, 2 miles down the road.
I traveled about a mile, and the light seemed to intercept me, so to speak. Came right upon me. It was painful. The light was extremely brilliant and painful. I closed my eyes and I heard the sound of breaking glass, and that's the last I remember.
Whatever it was came extremely fast. He didn't have time to be scared. He doesn't know what it was.
I have no idea. It's truly unexplainable to me, or unknown to me.
Johnson was unconscious for 40 minutes before he radioed for help and was taken to the hospital. A doctor and later an eye specialist confirmed that Johnson had suffered mild welder or flash burns to his eyes. Even stranger, both Johnson's wristwatch and the electric clock in his patrol car had mysteriously stopped for 14 minutes. An investigator from the Center for UFO Studies in Evanston, Illinois, flew in to examine the damaged patrol car. There was no evidence of radioactivity, and neither the investigator nor the sheriff can figure how the two spring-mounted antennas became bent at almost 90-degree angles. At the scene of the accident, skid marks show Deputy Johnson coasted for 800 feet after impact before applying the brakes. The area around here has been searched, but nothing's been found. All kinds of small airplane theories have been bandied around, but Deputy Johnson clearly remembers hearing no engine noise. And nothing explains the 14-minute lapse in the two timepieces, nor the peculiar bending of the antennas. It's a mystery, or as the UFO investigator from Illinois said, it appears to have been a close encounter of the second kind.
36 years later, the deputy's squad car is in the Marshall County Museum.
And then, of course, the windshield is broken, something you can see where it hit.
Herb Morstead was a fellow deputy at the time. The broken headlight and the dented hood, the antennas warped in different directions.
Whatever happened, there was evidence.
The dashboard clock stopped for 14 minutes.
You can see that it wasn't Val Johnson's head, for example, that hit there, because it's in the wrong place.
Too low.
Yep, way too low.
Didn't seem to be any airplane out way faster than something like that. We do believe that our deputy had an encounter with something that we haven't been able to explain yet on this date.
Conspiracy theorists are still trying to solve what law enforcement, mechanical inspectors, and the Center for UFO Studies could not.
I don't know what happened. I know in my own mind I did the best job we could at me and my department to investigate and find out what went on, and all we found out is we don't know.
Do you believe in UFOs?
Yeah, I kind of do. There's got to be something more than us around.
In fact, according to the National UFO Reporting Center, which verifies and debunks thousands of reports each year, there have been over 2,100 credible reports of UFO sightings recorded in Minnesota, spanning all the way back to the year 1932. Most of these sightings involve phantom lights that travel through the skies, lights which seem to emit no sound at all, silent alien objects that move rapidly and zigzag around before vanishing up into the sky. There are also a few other interesting reports I'd like to talk about that have emerged from Minnesota over the years. 2 documented reports of UFO sightings were officially recorded in Minnesota during the year 1965. The first incident involved Arthur Strouch, a deputy sheriff from Sibley County who was returning home from a family bow hunting excursion when he and his companions observed a metallic silver-hued object moving through the sky at an extraordinary velocity. Strouch successfully captured an image of the UAP using his Kodak Instamatic camera, an image to this day that has yet to be debunked. In another account, KEYL Long Prairie radio announcer Jerry Townsend reported that his vehicle suddenly stalled while he was driving along Highway 27. Upon investigation, he claimed to have encountered an unusual spacecraft resembling a rocket. Townsend further asserted that he was approached by 3 diminutive beings, each approximately 6 inches in height, with cylindrical forms resembling beverage cans, equipped with small appendages resembling fins. According to his report, the entities eventually departed, leaving behind 3 distinct oily residue markings on the roadway. Now, this is really interesting. So, the sheriff who made that first report we talked about, where the light beam destroyed his car, the sheriff from the second report we talked about, where they saw that thing zipping through the sky, and this radio announcer who saw these beings on the side of the road, they were all on country gravel roads very late at night. So I think that's a very interesting commonality between all of these stories, is that these UFOs or UAPs or extraterrestrials, I know those are loaded words, but these things are really making themselves known and visible to small select individuals and groups of individuals way out, in the countryside, in an area kind of like where Brandon was, where there isn't a lot of light, there's really nothing going on around the area. So I thought that was weird. A later incident in 1988 that I thought was interesting was documented by a mother in St. Paul, Minnesota, who submitted a report to the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON. She recounted that her 2.5-year-old son awakened her abruptly in the middle of the night while playing a ukulele that was ordinarily stored on a high shelf beyond his reach. Moments later, after a loud impact was heard against the ceiling, the child exclaimed, "Bug Eyes is here." Yeah, so The mom saw that this child had somehow gotten a hold of this thing that was way up on the shelf. They heard a huge bang on the ceiling and the kid screamed out, "Bug Eyes is here!" A subsequent medical evaluation revealed the presence of an omega-shaped abrasion on the child's back. And the origin of that remains to this day, by doctors and scientists alike, unexplained. So, could extraterrestrials have been involved in the disappearance of Brandon Swanson? Once again, I really do not want to sound like we're reaching here or being insensitive. I'm just legitimately questioning all of the evidence and presenting you people with every theory that has been brought up by investigators and armchair detectives alike. And I think it's interesting. I mean, so many of these theories, you can see they make sense up until this point where it doesn't make sense. Or, no, this one seems really strong, but then this one also seems like it's really strong. And it's confusing all around. You don't really know what to think. But after hearing all of this and taking that deep dive into the story, we knew that we had to investigate the disappearance of Brandon Swanson for ourselves. So on an extremely cold night in January of this year, we headed out to the frozen Minnesotan countryside, to the location where Brandon's car was discovered, in order to search for that truth for ourselves. All right, so we're here right now off of this road. I don't know if this road, it does have a name. I can't recall the name right now. But this is the area where Brandon Swanson actually crashed his car into the ditch. I think it would have been over here. I mean, it could have been over here. But this is the starting point of this entire mystery, because after the car crash and he gets out and starts talking on the phone, they don't know which direction he actually went. Now, the scent dogs followed his trail that way, northwest. But people believe he also could have been traveling southeast, which would have been that direction. But, I mean, this is the last concrete place that they know that Brandon, was at. Even though he was obviously never seen that night, there are just so many questions. And being out here is really weird. Something that we noticed is, when you hear this story and you think of like being on Minnesota back roads and everything, and he's kind of way out in the country, you'd imagine that he would have been like somewhere really remote, right? But this area, like there's a farm right there, there's farms all around here. The highway is just like right down this gravel road a little bit. There's a town really close by, and there's properties like everywhere. It's not like this is like the middle of nowhere, really. Like even right there, you can see a farm. Right there, there's a huge grain bin. And there's just over there, there's tons of farms. So it's really weird. But it's fucking freezing out here, dude.
So cold.
What do you guys think?
Being a Texas boy, I know nothing about this cold, so I'm freezing. Other than that, this story is absolutely crazy. I mean, anytime there's a story about a missing person case, I mean, you start to think to yourself, I mean, it's been so long. What possibly could have happened to the person or the body? I mean, they brought cadaver dogs out here, and then the scent just goes away.
Yeah, it just stopped.
Living on a farm, growing up on a farm, I went in the ditch one night late, and I ended up walking to the neighbor's house. So I get it, but there's always someplace to walk to. And so that's what's really perplexing. I mean, I don't know. It's really weird.
Plus, no trace ever found, or a cell phone. It's a very weird complication.
That's so strange.
Yeah, it's freezing, obviously. The thing that I think about is him drinking, is listening to his story, and probably why he wouldn't go up to a farmhouse, because he didn't want to get caught in case he was over the blood alcohol limit. So that kind of plays into how I think about it, that he was roaming around and waiting for his dad and those guys, his mom, to find him. So that's probably what my thoughts are, why he didn't go to a farm. But then what happened to him? You know, it's like, this is really remote. Obviously, we're taking lefts and rights on gravel roads to get here. So it's bizarre to me.
Listen to just how quiet it is, too. It's eerie.
And actually,
quiet,
it
right?
was 39 degrees that night as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
it's colder
even
now.
even that makes you think though too. It's like when someone drives on a gravel road. I mean, you walk on a gravel road. You can hear it. So, like, it wasn't like he would be surprised by someone driving up the road. You see them coming.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
especially when he says, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's nothing out here.
No.
No.
So something had to just like present itself like right then.
Yeah.
For him to
even
say
more
that.
creepy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And then they never have the phone, and then there's no noise after he says that. I guess in my mind, if he would have fallen into the river, I think that they would have found his body.
Yeah.
But B, I feel like there would have been some other noise. Same with the theory that he fell into like a well or something. The cadaver dogs, I just have a feeling would have found him because he couldn't have made it that far from here. So if they searched this whole area, they would have at least caught some of his scent. But yeah, it's really weird. It's one of those cases. It's like a missing 411 where just vanished into thin air. And I'm gonna put this on. I think I'm gonna need a hat. Holy fuck. I thought I'd look cool without a hat, but
Now you just look like a dingus.
yeah, I don't know what's going on. All
Look
right.
like the penguin.
Yeah, right.
Wasn't it feels like one out
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This feels way
Yeah.
colder than you said 12. It's
Hey,
colder.
at least y'all grew up in this kind of weather. I'm over here like,
Yeah.
I've never felt this cold before.
This
I
is
think
bad.
earlier, Mary, you said it felt like 7.
Yeah.
Right. But now it's like 2 or 0.
1.
Yeah,
Well,
1.
the other day it was like feels like -7.
Yeah.
I've never felt a negative temperature before.
Well,
Wow.
all right.
I think the key for all of us is just that when he said, like,
Oh shit.
oh shit, like that
What
had to
is that?
imply like something was right on top of him.
Yeah.
And how do you, like Connor's saying, you're walking down these or on a field or whatever, there's nothing around, and it can't just be like a coyote coming at you from
Yeah.
It's got to be like boom, and then he's
And like
gone.
nothing could have came up the road that would have been like, oh,
Yeah.
didn't see that coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, unless like someone was driving and they like swerved.
All right, guys. So I got the hat on. It's honestly helping a lot. We have some new devices in this episode. We have the Hexcom, which is an Ovilus type device, along with this brand new updated Spirit Chat. You've seen the Spirit Chat a lot in our videos. These are Ovilus type devices that basically measure the EMF levels in the environment, and any fluctuation, it puts that deviation value through an algorithm and gives you a word or an output. We also have the Epic Box, which is a yes or no device, and we're gonna do a spirit box. If there's anybody here with us, can you say yes, you're here? Or let us know?
No.
Oh.
What's that noise?
Pheasant. Walk. That's interesting.
Wait,
It
really?
says walk.
Walk? That's literally
Yeah,
what he
that's what
did
he's
from
done.
right here.
If you can see that.
That's actually pretty crazy. That's like exactly what he did.
He was walking and walking and walking.
So, whoever's here, are you saying that the young man who crashed his car into the ditch got out and started walking?
No.
What was he doing if he wasn't walking? What happened to him? That's weird.
No.
Did you see that guy? Brandon Swanson?
John.
John saw Brandon?
That's your name, John?
Maybe there's. Maybe he didn't get out and walk.
The guy who crashed here, we know that he crashed here, but then it's pretty unknown what happened afterwards. Is his body still around here somewhere?
Can you say yes or no?
Own hands.
Own hands? Let me see it.
O-W-N.
Weird.
Something happened by his own hands?
Pluto?
Wow.
Aliens?
Yeah.
That's
Wow,
weird.
that'd be weird, wouldn't it? Pluto?
That's really weird.
It's pretty
I mean,
bizarre.
that would be a connection to the stars and aliens.
People think that there was an extraterrestrial element to the disappearance of Brandon. Is that true? Were there alien creatures involved in what happened to him? No one cares.
Well,
We
There's-
care.
yeah.
There's a
We're-
lot of people
yeah,
who care.
Yeah.
That's why we're asking the question.
That's why we're out here right now. It's because we care. We want to know what happened.
Coin. So Brandon crashed right here in this area. Did he walk this way? Can you tell us if he started walking in this direction or traveling? You said he didn't walk, but did he go in this direction?
Wife.
Wife. Is this where Brandon walked? This way? Can you just tell us yes or no? What's that sound?
I think it's the cables.
Listen.
Does it sound like it's coming from over there?
Sounds like a windmill.
Wait. Stop and point the camera up there and let's just be quiet. It's a really weird noise, whatever that
Yeah.
is.
It'd be interesting to
Strange.
see Pluto's seen in the sky right now.
Can you just try to answer? Is this the direction that he traveled? The guy who crashed his car right here? Did he walk this way?
Did he walk to the river?
It's honestly so cold our devices might be malfunctioning.
Now that sound's gone. Whatever that was.
Weird.
Yes.
Yes.
So he did
He was
go this
walking
way.
this way.
Oh my
So that's weird because that's the scent that the dogs picked up on. Was him
I
going
wonder
this way.
where the exact point on this property.
I have a map of it in the car.
What
Well,
was that sound?
Wait,
I think that's an airplane.
plane. Well, when you think about it in the story, he was following lights. And so if you see in that direction, there are lights.
Yeah, that's
Like
really
in that
pretty.
exact northwest direction. But then there's also a flashing light right there.
right.
Who knows what lights were?
Yeah.
I mean, that light down there might be new.
Yeah, right.
Northwest is that way, and there's a red light on a tower down there. It's in between. It's past the shelter belt just a little bit.
Is there anything you can tell us about what happened to him?
Can you just give us a name? What would he say?
Yes, he can tell us something. I think, though, let's do this in the car for a little bit. It's fucking way too cold. I think our devices are malfunctioning. My hands are like...
Look how fast that he's running.
You can get frostbite within minutes.
I think I'm developing frostbite as we speak.
Yeah, I think my toes might fall off.
All right, guys, so it's literally... Hold up. Let's just show this on camera. Oh, feels like 4 degrees.
Crazy. Crazy.
So, it's just way too...
Mine said channeling.
We decided to come in here to continue doing a bit of a session. It's just too cold to be standing out there, and none of our devices were working. So we got War, Geek, Salvation, Suit, and Channeling on one device. And then on this one, we got Bombed, Snap, Keep Track, Tone.
Tone or tome?
Tone. So whoever we've been speaking to, do you know the name Brandon Swanson?
You might not know his name, but do you remember a young man crashing his car out in the ditch over here?
Collect.
Collect. And coin? The coin collecting? I don't know what that would be. Do you remember that? What he just asked? Watch. They watched it?
Yeah.
So you saw the crash? And you saw him?
Frank.
Did someone take him?
Yes.
Okay.
Did a human take him?
No. No.
Not a human.
Grand?
Something grand took him?
Non-human? No, twice?
No. It was something grand.
Oh.
So did you ask if it was human or non-human?
It said, was it human
It said
that took
no,
you?
no.
And it said no.
I affect the animals.
I affect the animals? Like, like
Definitely.
cows?
What they do? They
God.
Push me? No, I don't want to do that.
But it's even like, it said like they were watching, like waiting for him.
You guys ask a few questions. Yeah, can you take these headrests off?
May.
May. It said May.
Oh my God! And he disappeared in May.
Yeah,
You did in May.
In May.
Okay.
It just said May. Brandon disappeared May 14th. Now it sounds like we've established that rust, size, tense. It's a lot of words all of a sudden.
Theodore.
Vector?
Yeah.
That sounds again like a space thing.
Was there something supernatural to his disappearance? Aliens or interdimensional?
Seeds. Star seeds. That's a huge alien thing.
Really?
This one? Wire.
Well, look at what we're underneath. We're underneath the
Right.
telephone wires, and we just
Damn,
heard
that's
them.
crazy.
Oh my
Just heard 'em where we
gosh.
are. Well, there's also seeds you can think about for farming out.
Yeah, right.
Too. Can you give us any kind of sign that it actually was, or on any device that it was maybe non-human related to make?
What is it?
Your necklace.
I have the
You have
ankh.
an ankh.
Just like a symbol like that.
I wear it every day.
To give us civilizations connected to aliens.
Yeah.
Right.
Egypt.
Oh, for sure.
I'm a child.
Ah. What did it say?
No.
Wow.
And pounds.
Where was he taken?
Disruptive.
Again, you know, when he's taken, like, it's disruptive, it's chaotic. Whatever situation that was.
Been causing kind of chaos. I mean, for 20 years now, still nobody knows where he is. What happened to him?
Animals. Remember, they affect the animals. Mice. Tons of field mice out here, obviously.
So, we're talking about something that's non-human. I don't know if that necessarily means aliens or like he slipped into a different dimension or what that would mean. But can you explain what you mean by that? Who took Brandon?
Trainer?
A trainer?
I mean, that's what's hard to know.
Faces in fog.
Faces in fog.
Frank again.
Frank on both devices?
Frank again, yeah.
What?
That's what I
was Frank on there and there.
That's what I was looking up, Frank in there, to try to figure out something connected to Frank.
So there was
So
a
it's twice.
Frank involved?
Was there a Frank involved in the disappearance?
1950s.
Dirt? 1950s?
Well, there's definitely dirt around us. What happened to Brandon's body?
What?
Dude, drowned.
What?
Drowned?
Okay.
Above?
Drowned.
Let me see. Pass
Okay,
me the dimension.
that is
And dirt,
really...
dirt, maybe, you know, maybe he's maybe buried.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's pretty bizarre.
you know,
that's very strange.
maybe there's a series of, like, what happened to him.
Slave.
And then what?
And then each.
So I do want to state in here as well, we're doing this completely non-biased. Nancy. But we just want to figure out what happened to Brandon, and we don't know 100% that this is accurate. These are just experiments, and I want to explain that this is a real missing persons case, but there's just no explanation to this day, so we're trying, you know, what we can do to help. But it does seem like it's pointing to something
Otherworldly.
unhuman.
It does.
Inhuman.
2 men here.
2 men here.
2 men here.
Was there another man that went missing near here, like Brandon, who was taken or by the same things or died the same way?
Jenny.
I mean, I thought knowing the history of Brandon, there's these names could be connected to his family. It's a hard thing to research out in the middle of nowhere right now. Climb.
He did that.
He climbed out of the ditch.
He climbed out of the ditch and apparently went into the river and climbed out.
Yes.
Said faces in the
Yes.
fog.
Yeah.
I'd like to see, like, look up what the weather was like here
Which?
that day.
Me too.
See, I just said climb, like climb, and it said yes. Like, you know, if it were an alien, let's say they brought him up. This said witch.
Muddy. More dirt stuff.
Weird.
Muddy. And what did that say?
Oh,
I fell.
I fell?
I fell?
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Is this?
That's that's one of the
Billy.
big thoughts that are happening, that he fell into the river and he got drowned on the device.
Could this possibly be Brandon?
Decompose.
Buried under the body. Or it doesn't have to be buried, but
I mean,
could have just
that's
decomposed.
another thing too, is, I mean, he could have just floated down the river, and that's why they never found him.
Thank you for visiting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Brandon says yes.
Yes.
Thank you for visiting.
Wow. Yeah.
And what did that say?
Decomposed muscle.
I mean, he could have gotten by the gates. Who knows, It's not impossible, even though it's only knee-deep in some places. That's still plenty to go through.
Oh, yeah.
He could have also had, an animal could have grabbed him, brought him farther down. Anything could have happened.
Yeah, I don't know really what kind of animals
Yes.
they have here, but...
Higher?
Mm-hmm.
Climb higher.
Muddy. Drowned.
Brandon?
Above.
Is this you that we're talking to?
Could have gotten hung up on something.
The wire. Brandon, is this you?
Yes. 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 Yes.
That's weird.
This is Brandon.
Like, really?
So what you just
Yeah.
asked.
Shadows. Brandon, can you describe what happened to you? Party!
Oh, he was at a party.
He was coming back.
He was at, yep.
Dude.
Okay.
Wow.
So
what?
Is bizarre.
Yeah.
All right, so Brandon, you remember coming back from the party, because that's where he was coming from that night.
This is so nuts.
After you crashed your car here, what happened?
He had enough.
Had enough.
Yeah.
Had enough of the
'Cause he
party,
left.
you were leaving.
Remember?
What happened after your car was crashed? Can you tell us? Oh.
You're being followed.
Oh, that's creepy for us.
Maybe he's saying
He
he was being
followed, yeah.
And it wasn't his fault.
So
What time
my
was
fault.
it that it happened?
Past midnight.
God, look at it outside right now.
beer.
Beer?
Oh my
Beer.
gosh.
Let me see.
Beer.
That is insane. So you were drinking beer, Brandon? It's not your fault that he probably would feel guilty nowadays
For his
about
parents
having
and everybody
drinking
looking.
and everything. Elsie.
Maybe these are all like people he was around, but seems like you're kind of keeping it going. Like he was at a party. He'd had enough beer, drinking. It's not his fault. He disappeared.
Like, look how dark it is.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not a single light.
It's not even 6 o'clock
No.
yet. That's crazy. That's 5:58 right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, the red lights are from the the turbines that weren't here. Those are all recent, obviously.
Oh God, that would be so scary.
Clarify.
I'm at peace.
Trying to clarify. Wife.
I'm at peace.
Wife.
It said wife twice on 2 different devices.
I'm at peace as well. If he's
Well, that's good to know, Brandon.
0.
But what happened after the crash? Maybe you don't even remember. Did you start walking?
This is secret.
Why can't you tell us what happened to you after the crash? He was given instructions.
I was like almost blackmail.
This battery's almost dead. Where should... Oh,
Over here.
I was literally about to ask him if we should go over to where his scent ended.
Oh, that's weird.
Do you think you can talk to us more over there? If this is Brandon or somebody else?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Okay, that's what we should do.
Wow, that's crazy.
Blue eyes.
He had blue eyes! He had blue eyes.
Damn.
Okay.
wow.
Alright, is there anything else?
Joanna.
Great.
Great. Is there anything else that anybody, maybe if this was Brandon or somebody who's been speaking with us wants to tell us?
What did it say?
Akasha?
A-K-A-S-H-A. We're about to go drive to where Brandon's scent was last picked up. So Brandon, if you're here, just follow our car.
You don't have to be afraid of us.
No,
we don't want to hurt you.
It's a Akasha is a Sanskrit, which is the oldest known language. Translates to other or sky. So again, like up, atmosphere.
What the
That's
fuck?
That's
really that's scary, kind of.
What
But it's
the hell?
kind of weird that we're getting kind of a little bit of an alien connection, but then we got the drowning too.
That's
the
confusing.
Water. Yeah.
Look at, in Hinduism, first material element created from the astral world.
What?
Yeah.
Celebrate.
And in Jainism, which is Gandhi's religion, Akasha is space.
What?
Space beyond it.
Akasha?
Akasha.
I've never even heard that
everything.
word.
I went through Sanskrit, sky, or atmosphere, Hinduism, first material element created from the astral world, Jainism, Akasha is space, Buddhism, endless space, space again.
So
it's weird. Everything related to the space.
some people think, Brandon, if this is you or if this isn't you, that infamous. I mean, this is an infamous event. But some people think either you or Brandon, whoever we're talking to, may have been taken up into space, like abducted, or just crossed into another dimension.
Yes.
Can you find my grave?
I mean, I just
You
get
know,
the,
I got
I got
chills,
chills all up my back.
It's actually really crazy.
I get the feeling.
Oh my
it's
god,
like
that gave me like the whole body.
could be like a combination of things, like I said, like it involves aliens. Yet
Yeah.
he could be decomposed, buried, afterwards drowned here by them.
So before we leave, Brandon, we're trying to help find your body. Is there any clue that you can give us as to what happened to you or where your body would be? Elemental.
I remember that element.
Yeah, that was the
Right.
element.
Looked up.
That was I just.
Plate?
That's kind of weird. I mean,
Plate.
elemental, because that's Hinduism. The first element created from the astral world.
Any other clues? We're about to go to where the scent ended. Or maybe if you could just definitively answer. Was this Brandon, if this is you, were you taken by aliens?
Cold. It's definitely cold. It's cold that night too.
I love this.
I love this. Huh? So
Oh, that's great.
communicating.
We love this too. What? Oh shit, there's someone coming down the road.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously?
I don't think they're coming down the road. I think they're coming across their property.
Oh,
No, it's down
they're
the
coming
road.
down the road.
we should probably.
Let's hope they don't stop right here.
Well,
They,
we're a little.
They probably will.
Yes.
We're going to
Yes.
be a little
No,
bit.
they're going by.
No.
You're definitely like, what the f is that?
It's the first car we've seen.
Creepy, kinda.
Running a little lower.
Can you answer? Were you taken, or was Brandon taken by like aliens, like physically lifted up into the sky? That's what we pulled up into the sky.
Alright, Paul.
So that's a yes. He was like abducted by something and taken.
Can you play music?
And if it's him, maybe he just wants to hear some music.
What song would you like to hear?
Them.
Pulled up into the sky by them.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Brandon, if this is you, you were taken by somebody. Can you just say yes or no? Brother.
Incident.
Well,
this has been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We've gotten some really good responses.
No, this is like incredible, honestly.
It's crazy.
And like you said too, we have to just kind of like, we don't know for sure, but you just want to try to piece things together with what comes. To me, it seems pretty obvious that non-human would imply the alien concept.
Yeah.
A combination of maybe taking and then possibly
Alter.
leaving him back here, you know, after they were done with him.
Let's head on over to where he, his trail went cold. Whoever's talking to us, if this is, again, when we said that.
He is shy.
He is shy? That's weird. Well, whoever's talking to us, and Brandon, maybe if this is you, follow us over.
I won't lie to you.
Husband and wife?
And then right when you say you're going to go, all these start to really go off.
Necessary, too.
What if, like, husband and wife again, what if, I know you thought that was crazy, but just, if it is an alien posing as human. Oh. Okay. I guess
that is crazy.
I guess I shall stop.
Which is the way you just started.
He's like, no.
And then
no. Okay.
That was good.
That was pretty good. Thank you for that, Box, whoever you are.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to pause, take a drive.
Okay.
So we've driven about 4 minutes, and right here is approximately where Brandon Swanson's scent was tracked to. If you want to walk over here. Now, if it was daylight, you'd be able to see this better, but the river and that kind of area is right through here. I believe that these trees are actually, you know, the bank of the river. So at one point, like it was stated, the dogs followed his scent to the river, and then it came out on the other side of the river. So it was like he did end up crossing the river, but strangely he came out, and then literally at like this exact area approximately, he vanished. The scent just vanishes.
This said, I need help.
Really? Let me see.
And then Finn,
I need help. So one thing I want to point out, which is kind of confusing, when I first read this story, it's like you hear about this guy who crashed his car late at night and you're like, how did he get mixed up with where he was going? But this was 2008, before cell phones really had, like, you know, flashlights on them and stuff like that. So turn that light off and let's just show people how dark it is out here. I mean, look at this.
And this is a light night because it's clear skies and it's bright.
I can't see anything on this camera.
But now this is kind of interesting, guys, because Wait, well, yeah, you can turn it back on, I guess. But before, at that other location, the lights of like a city were not apparent when you were looking around, so it was kind of hard to tell what he would have been talking about. But if he was walking and talking to his parents, look behind us. There's like a shitload of lights.
Okay.
So, I mean, all the way from over there. I'll get them on camera in a second. Yeah, so.
And actually, over in that area would be like light pollution.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing the light, you
Yeah.
see light pollution.
Yeah, so you could actually see the lights of a city. So.
And this is
who
a
knows?
bright night. About as
Yeah.
bright as it gets.
Like completely clear sky.
Bright moon.
It's weird. But you got the spirit box? So right now we're out here on the road and we're gonna do a spirit box session. It was a little too cold for my parents, so they went back in the car. But Connor and I are gonna quickly do this. So we're here right now trying to ask a couple questions about Brandon Swanson, the young man who vanished from this area right here. To whoever's here, do you know the name Brandon? He's not out there. Do you know who Brandon was? Can you say his name? I swear I heard Brandon. The whole nation has been looking for Brandon for years. Is this where he disappeared from, right here?
They searched 20 years. Was Brandon taken by aliens or humans? It was fighting him.
Was he abducted by aliens?
There's many things. Out to the east.
Different camp in the upper session. 78 point.
In the yard?
Why did he yell, "Oh shit"?
Did you hear that?
Is that a coyote?
It is. It came from this way.
Well, that's kind of interesting too. Couldn't a coyote like scavenge his body if he did die a natural death?
100%.
I mean, it's
kind of close.
Pretty close to us. Did Brandon Swanson die a natural death?
Hurry.
Uh-huh.
Like a crying sound. Like, hurry.
What about the farm equipment theory? Did a farmer have something to do with Brandon's death?
What do you see?
What do you see?
Pilot.
Is this the place where he got abducted from?
Was it near here? Because this is where his scent went missing, or went dead.
Mystery.
Oh, mystery.
What can you tell us about what happened that night?
What happened to Brandon's body?
Combination.
24/7.
What happened to his body?
Find him.
So many theories. Well, It's freezing cold out here.
It's destroying our batteries.
So we're about to go sit in the car and do an Estes and a little more spirit boxing. But it's just so weird, man.
It's very strange.
This is such a famous story that I've read so many times and thought about.
Yeah.
And I've watched so many YouTube videos, but I've never actually seen someone like come out here and take video, and it's like so different than I was picturing in my head.
It's the scariest thing is imagining what he was seeing that night.
Yeah.
On the phone with his parents, walking around after midnight, and then they just hear, "Oh shit." And that's the last time they ever talk to their son again.
It's so goddamn quiet out here.
No.
It's way too quiet, dude. Eerie. Kind of weird how you can see the stars so bright tonight, too.
It's honestly beautiful.
All right, let's go sit in there.
Yeah.
It's
Hey everybody, it's Colin here. Thank you for watching today's video. Hello to all the new subscribers and hello to the rest of our beautiful, wonderful, spooky family. As you know, every single week here on the channel, we give away a free gift bag to one lucky viewer of the show. And this week, to enter the contest, all you have to do is like today's video, let's smash that like button, and comment "missing" in the comments section below. I'm gonna give y'all 10 seconds to do this now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So go comment. You can comment multiple times. It helps the video so much. But anyways, let's get back to today's video. Thank you for listening to my little spiel. I love you guys so much, and stay spooky.
Okay, so like I just said before, we already did the spirit box outside, but it's just too damn cold to possibly even sit outside right now. So we're gonna do the spirit box in here, and then we're gonna do an Estes. Can anybody here tell us what exactly happened to Brandon Swanson, like we were just asking outside? I heard river, I thought.
World.
Another world or something.
Stolen. Tinkerbell.
Can you just tell us what happened to Brandon?
Is Brandon's body still on Earth?
Can you give us any clues about what happened to Brandon?
He said he's dying.
Yeah, he said he's dying.
To the clouds.
Brandon, if you can hear me, are you buried here on Earth?
I'm confusing.
The car.
Do you know if Brandon's death was sudden?
We knew.
Is there anything we can do to help find Brandon?
We're gonna do an Estes method session now. Whoever's here with us, you can continue to answer those questions in the exact same way. Please try to let us know any information you have
about Brandon. If you don't know what an Estes method is, it's basically like exactly what we were just doing, but blindfolded with headphones on. And in my opinion, you have to have the human involved. It adds a whole different level of being able to hear things up close and personal with no distractions. So you guys are going to ask the questions. Let's try to figure out what happened.
Sounds good. Okay.
Reset the car.
Can you just tell me if Brandon is alive or dead? Maybe he's still alive. Is he alive or dead?
Dead. Get him.
Mary?
Did Brandon fall in the river?
Rare. Minnesota.
Was Brandon taken by aliens?
An episode.
Was Brandon taken by aliens? From.
Thank yous. Near the moon.
Near the moon?
Today.
He's near the moon today?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Wow.
A manca?
Oh. What was the other word that you said before?
I can't remember what that was.
Yeah.
Gave advice.
Symbols gave advice.
Symbols again. Brandon, are you...
It's an escape form.
Brandon, are you with people in space now, like aliens? Are you traveling with them? I was going to say, are you buried? What did it say?
Hidden
on the hilltop.
Hidden grave on the hilltop.
Okay.
Domestic violence.
They're blue.
They're blue.
That really makes it even harder to sort of the domestic stuff.
They're not the enemy.
So how many...
Say hi to them.
Ticket.
He was avoiding getting a ticket.
Oh my god.
1,000 miles per hour and Addison Dot.
1,000 miles per hour, that'd be more of a spacecraft.
Were you scared you were going to get in trouble that night?
Cupcake.
The water. Yep. He didn't spill a drop.
So were you taken by aliens or humans?
Behind you.
What's the difference?
One's
personal.
One's from outer space.
Pray for Martha. Touch.
Again, were you guys that took Brandon, were you aliens disguised as humans? Can you give us a clue on that one? Were you aliens disguised as humans?
Ugh, creepy. Mm-hmm.
I don't like that.
No.
I recognize you.
Crash.
Oh.
The snow.
This thing's been
taken.
Taken.
An injury.
Taken.
Or had an injury.
Did Brandon have
Colin,
an
I
injury
just heard.
Domestic violence, injury.
after the car crash?
Projection. Fingers.
12 hands.
Maybe he's injured.
Fingers.
12 hands, though? Back to again.
Yeah. Why does
I
it
think
keep
this
going
alien
like that?
concept is a little more strong than we think.
Go for it.
Can we contact these aliens?
It was a slip. Go higher.
Sacra res.
Get out. Let's chat. He's dead.
Why did they take Brandon?
He's their leader? I don't know.
And Brandon?
Can't get enough of him.
I mean, Brandon would be like...
That's so strange.
Ugh, I seen him myself.
I mean...
Just like, they sound like an old farmer.
Who's the leader? The leader of what?
You don't know.
Oh, God. That's weird.
Anu.
Did Brandon know the alien?
You see him on the right. Back in the day.
Could he possibly?
Car was broken.
Yeah, car was broken.
Soccer.
It's weird this hasn't had one.
You're stressing me out.
So no.
Is there anything you can tell us?
He was put back.
He was put back. He was buried. Was he buried here? Cause harm.
I wonder though if it's like, could it be
Tooken.
Like, oh man, I don't know. Just getting too far into the alien thing, but
Let me in.
Let me in.
Yep.
like here, like in our car.
Tonight.
Let me in tonight.
Talk to each other now.
Who are we talking to right now?
Beware, it's me.
Who are you?
Afraid.
Jeez.
Beware, afraid.
Like our feelings.
Are the aliens back?
It's definitely creeping out here.
The father.
Never left.
Father never left.
What's the father's
Can you see us now?
What's the father's name?
Look up. I swear. Can you see us now? Look up. Behind you, fatty.
Oh my God.
I'm not looking behind me. I'm skinny.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, well, I don't know who they're talking to.
Who are you?
Yeah.
I'm Connor,
I'm Jeff.
I'm Mary.
and this is Colin here
Anu.
next to me.
Did he say?
Or Anu.
Anu.
It's like almost like a little bit of an alien language.
new
at the
video?
That's
beginning.
hers.
Yeah.
Some
I
strange
better
word.
hold that,
What's your name?
Kevin.
Is that your real name?
Is that your human name?
Bishop.
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 I have none.
This is starting to feel really weird.
That's very
Yeah.
strange.
You're fucked. He came
Wait,
from
we're
Iowa.
fucked?
Yeah, we're fine.
Oh, great.
The area around here.
Do do aliens
First time
visit?
it said that.
They won't find me.
Is this a portal right in this area for the aliens? Is this a portal for the aliens to come and go?
It's gonna be a long night.
Fell.
What is it?
Fell.
Remmer.
Do aliens come here often?
Dr. Subvert. Threat.
Video.
Video again.
Again, look up.
What's up in the sky? Is it a spaceship? A planet?
Struck.
Hold up. He won't be found.
Why not?
Gem.
What is that?
Surgical precision.
Jen.
It's not like my name.
Surgical precision.
That would be again kind of a could be related again to what you think they
Troll. Or throw.
Point.
Point.
What happened
About
to
us.
What happened to Brandon's body?
Space Force.
That is like what?
Bread.
Will we ever know the truth?
Treatment. Or green men. I couldn't.
Mouse. Bye.
Bye.
Yep. I'm gonna get a new boy.
Castle.
I mean,
Denial. Or the Nile.
Is there anything else you want to tell us before we leave tonight?
Out here.
Out here.
once again, is this, before we go,
Male mate.
Is this a portal in this area? Or
Gotta play them.
Is this a portal for the aliens to come and go? This area right here?
Corresponded with me.
Oh,
for him.
Very clear, I could hear that.
All right, well, we're going to get going. Is there anything else you can tell us?
I'm done.
Disrupted.
I heard it
That's
too.
about it.
Okay.
Or since about.
That's about it.
Oh my god.
Scared me.
Jesus. Oh my god, that kind of scared me. Was that 15 minutes already?
Yeah.
Surgeon.
16.
Damn.
Yeah, then it said surgical precision.
This thing's been going nuts.
Yeah.
Surgeon?
And then I also had, though, remember, surgical procedure or precision?
That's
And
crazy.
so many like alien type of words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't hear
Like I'm
even
gonna-
that one word you guys were saying that whole time.
Like, I'm going to get me a new boy, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I did not expect it to be alien oriented.
Me
I was
too.
totally expecting this
Yeah.
investigation to be like his body is over here and
Yeah. So, I mean, what's your thought? Like, what do you think your best guess is?
I didn't hear what the questions
No, I
asked
mean,
and
as far as
stuff
just
were.
after tonight, what we've got, like, what would you can come to the conclusion if you had to guess a scenario?
Well, I'm hesitant to say that it's like aliens because it's just like so out there. And we want to obviously be respectful to his family and make sure the story's told correctly. But I do believe in missing 411, which is tied into aliens and all these weird disappearances that just don't make any sense. This is one that makes zero sense, and it falls perfectly along the lines of a similar disappearance. So I personally think that there's something weird involved in his disappearance. Whether that was like an alien abduction or a slip into another dimension or just like something we just can't explain. I just don't... all the possibilities have they've all been exhausted and searched and investigated, and there's literally not a single trace of him anywhere. No clothes, no phone, no scent, no glasses. What about you guys?
Well, and the scary thing is, if he did fall in the river, you'd eventually find, a phone or clothes
Something.
or something, even if
hope
it's
so.
down a long ways. I almost think the interdimensional connection, a river, but what happened right there? I don't know. It's strange.
I kind of feel, my gut feeling is that, alien sounds odd, but I think somehow if that were a case scenario just to think about, and then when he said, oh shit, it's like they were there like that to grab him. And then I think he disappeared somehow, like in the river and slipped by the gates. I mean, that's just my kind of feeling. It's something to do with that. But, aliens is out there, so
Did say a lot about the river and water.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a more
Yeah.
rational, but still it doesn't make sense because where's his body?
I don't know. I'm a big believer in aliens. And I do want to be respectful to the family. But at the same time, look at all the evidence we got. Like, we looked up that one word, and it's like everything to do with space. All the other questions that we asked getting answered with answers from space. Like you said, they've exhausted every possibility, and they've came up empty-handed. We're asking, is the body here on Earth? And it says no. Where else could it have gone?
I think at the end of the day, more questions than answers once again. but it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not the way that I thought this investigation was going to go at all. I really didn't even know that this was an angle that people thought was possible, but the evidence repeatedly showed that that could be the case. And yeah, just a weird one. Especially when you look up at the stars sometimes and you just think, the f*** is out there?
We can't be the only ones.
So small.
What's the quote? I think it's, there are either two possibilities. Either we're alone in the universe or we're not. Both are equally terrifying.
Very much so.
Definitely.
Most people don't look up. You just go about life not really thinking about it. It's kind of overwhelming when you do.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Honestly.
Well, you guys want to get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Brandon, if you came through.
Yeah.
And anybody.
If you're out here and you're speaking to us, we're really sorry about what happened to you. And we hope that us telling this story of what we experienced tonight will lead other people to question the world, see what else is out there.
I would just say again, we're trying to be completely respectful to the family. Really trying to just figure out what happened the best we can with this, these devices we have. But yeah, just Brandon, if you can hear me, I mean, sorry what happened to you, and I hope you're in a happy place.
Yeah, it's just hard to imagine if you or Connor just disappeared and no trace of you. So our heart goes out to the family, and I just, hope if Brandon was talking with us tonight, we helped a little bit and, try to communicate and get more answers for his family and just to put him at rest and peace. But just all of our thoughts go to his family and hopefully they get some answers.
What a mystery.
Indeed.
Okay.
Well, all right.
Ready?
Ready. So at the end of the day, I don't really know what to make of any of that evidence, but it seems as though I'm more confused now than when I started. There was evidence, that was pointing to a more earthly theory, like Brandon is still somewhere in the area, like he had drowned. There was evidence pointing to the fact that his disappearance may have had something to do with an extraterrestrial or interdimensional energy. It was just a lot of evidence, and I do not know what to make of it. So please comment your thoughts in the comments section. It was interesting though, seeing, this is the gravel road where Brandon actually disappeared from. And it's like, where did he go from right here? That's the $1 million question. And it just doesn't make sense. They searched that area so thoroughly. I'm someone who believes typically in alternative, trains of thought. And I don't know, I really believe in the missing 411 theory and that string of disappearances. And I don't know with Brandon. I mean, it seems like there's something so bizarre that happened here that you can't explain it. But I can also see the murder theory. I can see the farmer being involved to some degree. I'm not alleging anything here, but just none of it makes sense to me. And yeah, I just want to say once again, through these episodes, we are aiming to raise awareness. We're not trying to exploit tragedies. We're actually going out here to ask questions that we want answers to. And I believe in the paranormal. I really deeply do in my heart of hearts. I've had so many experiences, so many years of studying this, that I genuinely believe that we might be getting some form of evidence. Not evidence that's going to solve a crime, but evidence that's going to push people maybe into looking in the correct direction. And either way, these videos, they continue to help raise awareness about crimes and injustices that have never been addressed. So I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just want to say, if the Swanson family, if any of you guys are watching, my heart goes out to y'all. And I'm just so sad that there's no closure in this case, because after so many years, they deserve closure, and I really do hope that something does happen in the future. But anyways, thank you guys for watching today. Be sure to leave me a comment and like the video. We're going to be back next week with another in-depth investigation. I cannot thank you all enough for watching. It's Colin Brown here. Thank you guys. See you next week, and stay spooky.